Hello, dear listener. Boy, do we have a treat for you today. But first, a little history. I, Carrie, first started the Honestly, Dear Listener podcast all the way back in 2014. Things were a little different back then. The show ran for 2 seasons. Each episode was shorter, about 15 to 20 minutes in length, and it was more produced and way more edited than the longer form conversations Emily and I have today on the podcast. The focus was much the same, though, as it is today. I would interview artists on what it's like being a creative, and we talked a lot about mindset and process. I did the show in 2014 and again in 2016, and then I had 2 little boys. Life sped up to mach crazy, and I took a big, fat break. Then fast forward literally a decade, and Emily and I are having these weekly conversations on Zoom about the exact same stuff you hear us talking about on the podcast today. And she casually mentioned that she was thinking it would be really cool to start a podcast. And I was like, well, I already have one, and it's all set up and ready to go if you want to be my co-host. She said yes, and we together launched the 2023 reboot, also known as Season 3 of the Honestly Dear Listener podcast. So today, we're re-airing Episode 2 from Season 1, from all the way back in 2014, where I'm interviewing my very first guest I ever had on the podcast, which is none other than the current co-host of Honestly Dear Listener, Emily Hatch. We hope you enjoy, dear listener.
Honestly, dear listener.
Woo! Have you ever felt intruded on? Like everything's all fine and dandy and you're super comfortable with the way things are, and then someone comes along and upsets the whole order of things? It was my first day of 6th grade. You remember 6th grade, right? The mismatched socks, the prepubescent BO permeating the gym, the area around the drinking fountain, the classroom as you sit there in vain trying to figure out what the heck the value of X is. Yeah, those were the days when if you were a girl, you got your first bra, and then maybe hid it in your pencil box when it got too itchy. When one of the most coveted talents was who could run the fastest, and you totally liked boys, but you'd never admit to it because if you did, that meant that now you were getting married and having 14 babies together, even though you didn't have the slightest clue how that was accomplished. I think things are a little different now, and kids aren't so innocent anymore, but back in 1995 and in private school, this was the way it was. So my first day of 6th grade, I am the top dog of my teeny tiny class, or at least I thought it was. I could execute a killer Randolph, stuck stickers in the middle of my forehead, wore my headgear to school and thought it was edgy, and I was a pretty good singer. And in walks Emily, this girl with permed brown hair who, get this, hung out with the boys. Yeah. She just walked right up to them on the first day and started talking to them. And just like that, she was just accepted into their group. Like she was the one exception to the no girls rule. And it made me furious because I liked those boys, but would never think of letting on that I did. And the kicker, she sang really well. And I don't mean like 6th grader well. Like could have had her own show at 11 years old well. Needless to say, we spent the whole of 6th grade disdaining each other. Until 7th grade when, on the first day of school, something clicked for both of us. We both kind of started to kind of like each other. And then we started to sing together. We'd sing at Christian functions around Grand Junction and at our school's basketball games, at which we treated the audience to a version of the Star-Spangled Banner that was so overstylized it would have made Mariah Carey look like a white girl. That girl is Miss Emily, and I'm proud to call her one of my very dearest friends. She sings soul and jazz and funk, anything, really. If you told her to sing like Britney Spears, she would rip out a rendition of Hit Me Baby One More Time so spot on that you'd swear you were in 1998 again. She just moved to Denver to further her singing career, but just before she did, she stopped by my place and talked about her experiences with being an artist. So I guess I kind of just want to get a sense for your background. Where have you come from?
Singing in my parents' church was how everything started. Started doing musical theater more, and long story short, the theater ended up closing, So I didn't really want to stop performing. So I started working with a band, and the lead singer left, and I became the lead singer of the band. And since then, I've been performing. It's been, gosh, I think I've had my own band for about 5 years now.
Did you always know that you were going to be a performer?
Yeah. When I was a kid, we had like dress up days where you dress up as whatever you wanted to be or whatever at our private school. I would dress up as like a singing evangelist because for a while I thought I was going to be a pastor, somebody like traveling around singing. I've never wanted to be anything else, and I decided I was going to be famous when I was a kid. So I thought I would always, I'd be a singer. That's what I was going to do. So yeah, there was no question in my mind.
How do you fight the critic? Meaning that person in your head that is telling you that you suck and you can't do anything right and you should never try.
I like to remind myself of the alternative. If there's a person in there that tells me I can't do it, then what's the alternative? Not doing it? As I mentioned, that's not been an option for me. So either I've got to get over it and be who I want to be, or I'm going to just sit and do nothing and then be what? Worse, in my opinion. I think it's a daily battle. Some days I wake up and I look at myself and I think, all right, like we got this under control. And then within hours, I can be like, why do you even bother? You know, you don't look like this, you don't sound like that, you're not doing enough. So that's not weird. I think a lot of times artists are like, they think they're the only people that hate everything they do. and I think we're all our own worst critic. A good way to get over it is by focusing more on improving and doing stuff that is attainable for you every day. Looking at I'll never be Beyonce is really not going to get you into the right space to be anybody else. You'll just sit like a slug and do nothing. There's a quote that says like, whether you think you can do something or you think you can't, you're right. Mm-hmm. And if you sit every day and tell yourself you can't do stuff, you're going to be right because you won't do it. And that's how I accomplish, my daily fight with the critic in my head.
Would you say that you have a lot of insecurities, a medium amount of insecurities, or really no insecurities?
There's absolutely no question that I have a ton. I have to conquer those all the time. You're never going to have everyone like you. I spend a lot of time thinking about people are attracted to me, or if they think I look good when I sing, or if I've gotten too fat for this, or if I'm getting too old for that, or blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I'm wildly insecure. But that's also what makes me emotional and in touch with people and things, because I'm questioning everything always. Unfortunately, myself being the biggest thing I question. So you have to be really strong to know that when someone tells you you're ugly and fat, that's their opinion. I've been told that many times. And then you go other places and that's not what they feel. I had a really hard time with that, hearing the truth about what somebody thought of me and not internalizing it. I think I wasn't strong enough for that at the time. But since then, I think I've grown some calluses and I can get over it.
What role and how big of a role does fear play in your life, personally and as a performer?
Personally, unfortunately, probably a big one. Professionally, it used to play a bigger one. When I was younger and more nervous, it was intimidating to think about, there's 600 people looking at me right now, and what if I mess up? And, there was a transitional time where I stopped thinking about it like I could mess up in front of all these people, and I started thinking of it like all these people are here to see me, and what a really exciting feeling, but a humbling feeling all at the same time. And so
you just changed your mind.
Basically, I had to just tell myself that like, they're here to watch you do well. If you sit home and are afraid of everything, you are guaranteed to not do anything. If you put yourself out there, you are guaranteed to do something. If people hate you, they will forget you. If they love you, they will remember you. If you're afraid, they'll never hear you. So I'd rather people heard me, hated me, and forgot me than sit and guarantee that I had nothing to do. And chances are, if you've worked hard enough, you have nothing to be afraid of. So that's how I have to combat that fear. It plays a huge role in my life, but I try really hard to shut it up.
How do you shut it up?
Just doing it anyway.
So what you do, you don't get to a state of not feeling it and then you perform. You feel it and you perform anyway.
I get scared every show. It's rare for me to not shake through the first part of my show. Every show. I'm scared. Every one. You just do it anyway. Use it. You know, I use the energy in a positive way.
So it's a choice you make.
Oh, yeah. No, it doesn't go away. I think once it goes away, you're not as good anymore. It's not as strong because you have to overcome it. I think to myself, this should get easier, right? No, it doesn't. You just got to keep going, you know? So I don't let it stop me. I try not to.
Sweet sunlight, shine on me, and need to believe that you never stop watching me. Darkness fell, and my life went to hell without asking me if I believed that I was left alone again. So forgive me for wondering why you've been, oh, my sweet sunlight. Shine on me. I need to believe that you never stop watching me. Now,
So when I look back on growing up with Emily, I have a couple of thoughts. What would have happened if we'd never become friends? Well, number one, I wouldn't be half the singer I am today. And number two, I maybe wouldn't have learned that sometimes life plunks people in your path that look like obstacles, but are really just blessings in disguise. Blessings that actually sharpen you, that make you better, if you let them. But we have to choose to see them that way. Who is your obstacle? That person who is where you wish you were. What if you Facebooked them or even called them and just simply asked, what can I do to get better at my art? You may feel weak and maybe even a little silly, but letting someone into your process is actually very brave. When we reach out, we create an atmosphere in which it's safe to learn and grow and change, which are all very necessary processes to improve in anything. We sharpen each other. In fact, we're better together than we ever would have been had we stayed isolated. Dear listener, when we let our boulders become our bridges, we all win. My name is Carrington Schaefer, and thank you for joining us today for another episode of Honestly, Dear Listener. Find us on the web at honestlydearlistener.com. And by the way, you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Today's show was produced by myself and Seth Schaefer, music by Kevin MacLeod. Our wonderful sponsor is Hopticopter Films, who specialize in creative visual storytelling, and without them, we could not do what we do. Find them on the web at hoptocopter.com. Special music on today's program was performed by Steve Williams, Fernie Garcia, John Schultz, Bill Moody, and of course, Miss Emily. You can find her on the web at mymissemily.com. Also, in the show notes, you can find links to her work, including a music video of the last song you heard, Sweet Sunlight. You can also buy the song and her other music on iTunes. And if you're wondering what you're hearing right now, it's myself and Miss Emily when we were in 8th grade. Join us in 2 weeks when our program continues.
Honestly, dear listener.